Good evening, everyone. Isn't that beautiful? That's Kamyab Saderi's piece called Went, in Farsi Raft. It's lovely, isn't it? Let me see. Oh, it's always my hair. Okay. Good evening and welcome to another reading of 1001 Nights. My name is Samanjarada and I'll be your host this evening. And I really wanted to wear these earrings. They're lovely, aren't they? Treat yourself, I'd say. Do what makes you happy. So, if you don't know what the story is so far, which is a really beautiful love story, definitely one of my favorite ones so far, it is the story of a beautiful prince and a beautiful princess. They don't know each other. She lives in China and I do not recall whether they mentioned this. And none of them wants to get married, so their respective fathers imprison them in towers. And in the towers, they are visited by ifrits, which are underworld demons. And these two ifrits meet each other and they argue over who is actually watching over the most beautiful person. So in order to prove the other wrong, they decide to put them together side by side. And while they were asleep, while one wakes up, the other is asleep, and the other wakes up and the other one is asleep, you know. And they take the rings of each other and put them on their own hands. I hope that makes sense. That was probably not the best, hold on, let me just rephrase this. So while one is asleep and the other one wakes up, the other one takes the ring. Okay, you know what? Let's just leave it at that. They end up with the rings of the other one. Sometimes it's just more difficult to speak, isn't it? And now they awoke, each by themselves, not knowing, what happened, and nobody is believing that they actually did spend the night together. So the only proof is the ring. And Princess Budur's brother is actually talking to her right now, and maybe he's going to believe her, and maybe he's going to go and try to find the prince. All right. So enjoy the reading, everyone. I'm sorry, I sit more comfortably like that. Okay, up. Better this way. Now when it was the 194th night, she said, "It hath reached me, auspicious king, that Marzavan thus addressed Princess Budur. Tell me concerning thy tale and what befell thee. Haply Allah may inspire me with a means of deliverance for thee." Quoth she, "O my brother, hear my story, which is this. One night I awoke from sleep in the last third of the night, and sitting up saw by my side the handsomest of youths that be. And tongue faileth to describe him, for he was as a willow wand or an Indian rattan cane. So methought it was my father who had done on this wise in order thereby to try me, for that he had consulted me concerning wedlock, when the king sought me of him to wife, and I had refused. It was this thought withheld me from arousing him, for I feared that if I did aught or embraced him, he would peradventure inform my father of my doings. But in the morning I found on my finger his seal ring, in place of my own which he had taken. And, O my brother, my heart was seized with love of him at first sight. And for the violence of my passion and longing, I have never savoured the taste of sleep, and have no occupation save weeping alway, and repeating verses night and day. And this, O my brother, is my story, and the cause of my madness." Then she poured forth tears and repeated these couplets. Now love has banished all that bred delight, with that hard nibbling fawn of my joys took flight. Lightest of trifles, lover's blood to him who wastes the vitals of the hapless wight. For him I'm jealous of my sight and thought, my heart acts spy upon my thought and sight. Those long-lashed eyelids rain on me their shafts, guileful, destroying hearts wherever they light. Now while my portion in the world endures, shall I behold him ere I quit world's side? What bear I for this sake at hide but tears, betray my feelings to the spy's despite? When near our union seemeth ever far, when far my thoughts to him I nearest are. And presently she continued, See then, O my brother, how thou mayest aid me in mine affliction. So Marzavan bowed his head groundwards a while, wondering and not knowing what to do. Then he raised it and said to her, All thou hast spoken to me I hold to be true. Though the case of the young man pass my understanding, but I will go round about all lands, and will seek for what may heal thee. Haply Allah shall appoint thy healing to be at my hand. Meanwhile, take patience and be not disquieted. Thereupon Marzavan farewelled her, praying that she might be constant, and left her repeating these couplets. Thine image ever accompanies my sprite, for all thou distant from the pilgrim's side. But my heart wishes ever attract thee near. What is the lightning's speed to thought's swift flight? Then go not thou, my very light of eyes, which even thou'rt gone lack all the call of light. Then Marzavan returned to his mother's house, where he passed the night. And when the morrow dawned, having equipped himself for his journey, he fared forth and ceased not faring from city to city, and from island to island for a whole month, till he came to a town named Al-Tayrab. Here he went about scenting news of the townsfolk, so haply he might light on a cure for the princess's malady. For in every capital he entered or passed by, it was reported that Queen Budur, daughter of King Ghayur, had lost her wits. But arriving at Al-Tayrab city, he heard that Kamar al-Zaman, son of King Shahriman, was fallen sick and afflicted with melancholy madness. So Marzavan asked the name of the prince's capital, and they said to him, It is on the islands of Khalidan, and it lieth distant from our city a whole month's journey by sea, but by land it is 6 months' march. So he went down to the sea in a ship which was bound for the Khalidan Isles, and she sailed with a favouring breeze for a whole month till they came in sight of the capital. And there remained for them but to make the land, when behold, there came out on them a tempestuous wind, which carried away the masts and rent the canvas, so that the sails fell into the sea, and the ship capsized with all on board. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day and ceased to say her permitted say. Now when it was the 195th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the ship capsized with all on board, each sought his own safety. And as for Marzavan, the set of the sea carried him under the king's palace, wherein was Kamar al-Zaman. And by the decree of destiny, it so happened that this was the day on which King Shahriman gave audience to his grandees and high officers, and he was sitting with his son's head on his lap, whilst the eunuch fanned away the flies. And the prince had not spoken, neither had he eaten nor drunk for 2 days, and he was grown thinner than a spindle. Now the vizier was standing respectfully a foot near the latticed window, giving on the sea, and, raising his eyes, saw Marzavan being beaten by the billows, and at his last gasp, whereupon his heart was moved to pity for him. So he drew near to the king, and, moving his head towards him, said, I crave thy leave, O king, to go down to the court of the pavilion and open the water gate, that I may rescue a man who is at the point of drowning in the sea, and bring him forth of danger into deliverance. Peradventure, on this account allow me free thy son from what he hath. The king replied, O thou vizier, enough is that which hath befallen my son through thee and on thine account. Haply, if thou rescue this drowning man, he will come to know our affairs, and look on my son who is in this state, and exult over me. But I swear by Allah that if this half-drowned wretch come hither and learn our condition and look upon my son, and then fare forth and speak of our secrets to any, I will assuredly strike off thy head before his. For thou, O my minister, art the cause of all that hath betided us, first and last. Now, do as thou wilt. Thereupon the vizier sprang up, and opening the private postern which gave upon the sea, descended to the causeway, then walked on 20 steps and came to the water, where he saw Marzavan nigh unto death. So he put out his hand to him, and catching him by his hair, drew him ashore in a state of insensibility, with belly full of water and eyes half out of his head. The vizier waited till he came to himself, when he pulled off his wet clothes and clad him in a fresh suit, covering his head with one of his servants' turbans. After which he said to him, Know that I have been the means of saving thee from drowning. Do not thou requite me by causing my death and thine own. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day and ceased saying her permitted say. Now when it was the 196th night, she said, It hath reached me, auspicious king, that when the vizier did to Marzavan what he did, he thus addressed him, Know that I have been the cause of saving thee from drowning, so requite me not by causing my death and thine own. Asked Marzavan, And how so? And the vizier answered, Thou art at this hour about to go up and pass among emirs and viziers, all of them silent, and none speaking because of Kamar al-Zaman, the son of the Sultan. Now when Marzavan heard the name of Kamar al-Zaman, he knew that this was he whom he had heard spoken of in sundry cities, and of whom he came in search. But he feigned ignorance and asked the vizier, And who is Kamar al-Zaman? Answered the minister, He is the son of Sultan Shahriman, and he is sore sick and lieth strown on his couch, restless alway, eating not, nor drinking, neither sleeping night or day. Indeed, he is nigh upon death, and we have lost hope of his living, and are certain that he is dying. Beware lest thou look too long on him, or thou look on any place other than that where thou settest thy feet. Else thou art a lost man, and I also. He replied, Allah upon thee, O vizier, I implore thee of thy favour, acquaint me touching this youth thou describest. What is the cause of the condition in which he is? The vizier replied, I know none, save that 3 years ago his father required him to wed, but he refused, whereat the king was wroth and imprisoned him. And when he awoke on the morrow, he fancied that during the night he had been roused from sleep, and had seen by his side a young lady of passing loveliness, whose charms tongue can never express. And he assured us that he had plucked off her seal ring from her finger and had put it on his own, and that she had done likewise. But we know not the secret of all this business. So by Allah, O my son, when thou comest up with me into the palace, look not on the prince, but go thy way, for the Sultan's heart is full of wrath against me. So said Marzavan to himself, by Allah, this is the one I sought. Then he followed the vizier up to the palace, where the minister seated himself at the prince's feet. But Marzavan found forsooth nothing to do but go up to Kamar Zaman and stand before him at gaze. Upon this, the vizier died of affright in his skin and kept looking at Marzavan and signalling him to wend his way. But he feigned not to see him and gave not over gazing upon Kamar Zaman till he was well assured that it was indeed he whom he was seeking. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day and ceased to say her permitted say. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the story. I love this story. I really have to fix that light, don't I? Well, I wish you all a wonderful night. Peaceful, sweet dreams. Joy and happiness in everything you do. And Joanna is going to continue our beautiful tale tomorrow, so please tune in. I will see you next week, and until then, as usual, remember to go inwards instead of outwards. Have a good night, everyone, and much love.